Good morning, it's Loren Lockman from the Tanglewood Wellness Center in Costa Rica. And yesterday we were talking about guilt and shame and how we wind up developing these things as usually, I think, as young children. And the question is, so here we are, we're adults now. We've decided that we're tired of walking around with this guilt and shame. We'd like to learn to love ourselves. How do we do that? What are the steps we can take to actually making that happen? And like a lot of things, the fact that you've asked the question is probably the first and most important step, right? Become conscious of what's going on and take responsibility for changing it. Those are the first two things that most people never do, right? They willingly stay unconscious of what's going on. And they never take responsibility for it being different. They go on living their entire lives blaming, as we talked about yesterday, blaming their parents, or maybe blaming teachers, or maybe blaming their priest, or wherever it came from. We've taken it on board, right? The first thing to get really clear about is to take responsibility for what we are currently believing, because we can blame these adults in our lives. I think we can agree that even if they were doing the best they could, it wasn't that good, and they wound up doing a lot of potential damage. But the bottom line is, we always want to start by getting completely clear about what's real. And the reality right now is that we are believing whatever we're believing, okay? And it's that we're believing it that it's the issue, not that somebody else made us believe it, or that they believed it, or none of those things really matters. What matters is what we believe. So by taking full responsibility and then doing an honest inquiry. And I asked you to hand me this book. This book is a book called Calling in the One by Catherine Woodward Thomas. It is a fantastic book. There's also a course. They offer an online course, which I think it's a 7-week or 8-week course. I don't remember now. But it's a really wonderful program. And the idea is, it says, the subtitle, 7 weeks to attract the love of your life, right? Calling in the One. It's an interesting title. Some people might say that it doesn't really deliver. If you do the work, and you may not meet your soulmate in 2 months. But what I would suggest is that it's actually right on, because if you do the work, who you will call in, the one you will call in, is yourself. And that's where we have to start. Again, what a lot of people, probably the vast majority of people do, is they go through their entire lives looking for somebody else to make them feel okay about themselves. So if I could just find that person who could accept me, well, yeah, that's great. Of course we want a partner who accepts us. But the likelihood of that ever happening, if we don't accept ourselves, even if we do find that person, if we don't accept ourselves, it doesn't matter. The other person can't fix us. The other person is never going to make it be okay. We have to do the work of coming to terms with our own beliefs and the issues that we've created as a result of those beliefs, or that have been created, that have arisen as a result of those beliefs. Now, again, I'm speaking that we've created. Some people are going to say, wait a second, but I didn't create this stuff. This was put on me. Again, as I like to point out and have pointed out in other videos, we basically have two options with regard to any aspect of our life, okay? It could be anything you can name. We can see ourselves as the powerful creator in our life with regard to that thing, right? Or we can see ourselves as a powerless victim. Okay? If you've been choosing powerless victim, let me suggest you reconsider. Okay? Because if you're holding yourself as the powerless victim with regard to anything in your life, you, by definition, the powerless victim can't change it. So if you hold yourself as the powerful creator, even if you don't know how or why you created what you did, why it's shown up this way, if you're the person that's responsible for creating everything in your life, you can make it different. You can create something else. Okay, if you created that, You can create something else. But if you're the victim, you are by definition powerless. So that is a completely disempowered way to look at it. Okay? So take full responsibility and see yourself as the powerful creator. Don't beat yourself up. This is not about blame. Blame is focused on how you got from over there to over here. Okay? But it doesn't make any difference. Right? How I got here makes no difference. Here's the fact. Right now, this is where I am. Now, this might be working for me. It might not be working for me. It might be comfortable. It might be uncomfortable. It might be a good place to be. It might not be. But the fact is, this is where I am. And where I was a moment ago or an hour ago or yesterday or last year makes no difference. Now, a lot of people live their lives as if their future is dictated by their past, especially with regard to this very issue. Well, of course, I'm an alcoholic, drug abuser, criminal, pedophile, whatever, because my parents abused me. My uncle molested me. My teacher beat me. Whatever, right? But here's what's true, I believe. Your future is dictated by your choices, by your willingness to take a stand for yourself, to live a no-limits life. Because it doesn't matter what happened to you 5, 10, 20 years ago. What matters is whatever you choose to create with all of that now. And it's completely up to you. There are many, many examples. In fact, I would suggest most of the people that we most admire are those people who pulled themselves up, who created amazing things with their life, often in spite of terrible odds against them. Those are the people that I find inspiring. Okay? So, those are the people who never said, well, I can never become anything because this is what happened to me. Those are the people who became everything they did in spite of whatever happened to them. In fact, some of them used that very terrible thing as a springboard to rocket them to their amazing success in whatever area of life they were successful in. You can do exactly the same thing. We all can. So stop using whatever happened as an excuse to stay stuck. That's nonsense. Okay? Get really clear about what you're committed to. Because if you want to maximize your potential, you can, but you have to be willing to let go of all the excuses and simply move forward. And when you do that, if you take responsibility and you actually look at what are you believing, this is the next most important piece. What are you actually believing? What are you telling yourself? Now, this can be hard to do. And so as I started to say, I mentioned this fantastic book, Calling in the One, because in this book, there are exercises. It's a workbook, essentially. And if you do the exercises, one of the things that you will uncover is what are the existing disempowering subconscious beliefs that you've been walking around with your entire life. And I can virtually guarantee you that you have some. When I took this course, there were more than 1,000 people on the course. And there was nobody who said, I don't have one of these. Everybody did the work, and people had a chance to share and speak up. And I actually worked with a group where we did a couple of calls on the phone via Skype every week. And it wasn't a large, but everybody. I mean, these were people who were successful in all walks of life, mostly people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who had a significant amount of experience in life. Everybody was walking around believing these things. I mentioned Robin Williams a little while ago. Someone like Robin Williams kills himself, and people think, but I mean, the guy was a multimillionaire. He was incredibly successful. Millions and millions of people loved him and admired him, right? Why would he do that? What's the answer? He didn't love himself. And all the love and admiration from outside doesn't change that. It might temporarily make it feel a little bit better, but no matter, a big movie comes out, He goes to the premiere. There's all these people there applauding him, telling him how great he is. Right? Wherever he goes, he gets this, I'm sure. But then he goes home by himself, right? Or at some point he's going to be with himself. And what's going on? What's going on is that little voice inside of his head that's probably been there since he was a little infant, saying, "You're a piece of crap. You're worthless." And all the outside stuff doesn't help. Okay? So you got to get clear. This is critically important, is to do this work to uncover what these beliefs are. They tend to be one of about 10 or a dozen statements that almost everyone can relate to one or more of these. Usually there's one that's kind of at the core of everything else. And they tend to be things like, I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. I don't belong. Okay? Mine was, I figured this out 4 years ago at the age of 50. Right? Thank God it didn't take me till I was 90. I realized I've been walking around my entire life subconsciously believing I'm not lovable. Well, gosh, what a surprise that I don't have any successful long-term relationships. How could I have a successful long-term relationship with a partner if I'm believing I'm not lovable? If someone says she loves me, she must be a liar. Or there must be something wrong with her. I better get away from her and find someone sane who can't love me because I'm not lovable. I mean, that's all the subconscious conversation that goes on. That's what happens. Okay? These are really powerful and unfortunately disempowering. They completely take our power away from us when we believe these things. So we need to take a look at what we're believing. Someone mentioned yesterday the 4 agreements. And the 4 agreements starts out by talking about how the Toltec idea, this Toltec wisdom from ancient Mexico says that we walk around with all kinds of agreements with ourselves about these same kinds of things. The agreement might be, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not attractive, nobody likes me. These are the kinds of agreements that people have, and what the book suggests is we need to replace all those agreements with just 4, which we talked about yesterday. If we can just replace, if we can bring those 4 in and eliminate the rest of them, now we're okay. If we're always doing our best and not making assumptions and using our word impeccably and not taking anything personally, all the rest doesn't matter, okay? But we have to figure out what our current beliefs are. And then we have to bring them up to the light of day. Now, these are things that most of us aren't aware of because we don't want to be aware of them, because it's too painful to look at. But the truth is, that's just the ego's belief. That's why it never happens. Now, as soon as we actually look at it, we go, okay, that's kind of silly. Like, I know I'm believing this. I know that somewhere deep inside, this is what I'm telling myself, but I also know it's not true. I realize I'm lovable, not by everyone, but by a few. Okay? So, there only has to be one person, right? My dog loves me. I don't have a dog, but my cats love me if I feed them. I think it might be conditional love. Most of the time, if we bring these beliefs up to the light of day and we actually look at them, we can see how silly they are. We can usually see that. Okay? And if we can't, that's okay. What we want to do is just get conscious of them. We don't have to fix them. We don't have to figure out what's wrong with us. All we have to do is be willing to look at these things. When we bring the light of our attention to them, they tend to start shifting of their own accord. Okay? It's just what happens if we're willing to do this work. The first piece is to uncover them. And one of the things that happens is, uncovering them doesn't make them go away completely, but there's an important thing that happens. Now, if I find myself behaving in a way that might be counterproductive, like doing something to push my partner away, I can stop and say, oh, hang on a second. There's that belief showing up again. This is my subconscious desire to protect myself. I know this person can't really love me because I'm not lovable. So I keep her away, right? But as soon as I notice this is what I'm doing, I can remind myself, that's not true. Yeah, that belief may still be there to some degree, but it's not true. I don't have to let it run my life anymore. Being conscious of it changes everything. Until we become conscious of it, we're going to become a victim of it. Right? If we're not conscious of it, if we don't know that it's operating in the background all the time, it's going to affect us, and there's very little we can do about that. So this is really all we need to do. Okay? This is how we begin to see significant change. There are many other things that we can do on top, but I think this is a good place to start. So the first step, again, is take full responsibility. Take a look at what you're telling yourself. What are you believing about yourself? Okay? And then bring it to the light of day. Simply be willing to look at it. And, if you still think it's true, you might want to pick up a book called Loving What Is, or another book called The Work of Byron Katie. Okay, these are both books by Byron Katie. And Katie takes a centuries-old spiritual practice, which is simply questioning everything. Okay? If I'm telling myself I'm not lovable, then the first step in the work is to say, is that true? If I say, yeah, it's true. Okay, I ask myself, how can I know that that's true? Where's my evidence that that's true? Now, chances are good there won't be a lot of evidence. I mean, I might have some, but, because someone doesn't love me, that means I'm not lovable. But, right? So we go through this process that Katie describes. I can talk about that in another video if you'd like, in more detail. And that can help us realize that some of the beliefs that we're clinging onto desperately are not true. And again, that's incredibly empowering. When we recognize that our own beliefs aren't true, they cease to have this power over us, as I said a moment ago. Okay, so those are basically the steps. We do those things, we can start to become free once again. Hope that's been helpful for you.